Hello everyone, today we're going to take a look at Moebius Alla ricerca del tempo, which is the latest book about the artist that has come out. It is an occasion of the still ongoing exhibition happening as of this video in Naples, Italy. And it is in effect a catalogue, an exhibition catalogue, but also a retrospective on Moebius's most important work, I would say. In terms of the book itself, it is 178 pages long in color. The dimensions are 24.7 centimeters by 31, which in inches is around 10 by 12 inches, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a pretty big book. In terms of size, if you want to see a comparison, here's a regular trade paperback format, so you can see it's a good solid size. In terms of binding, I would say the binding is excellent. It's a classic hardcover binding with both sewn and glued pages, and they've done a great job with everything, I would say. As you can see, it stays nice and flat, which is also helped by the fact that the pages are really, really thick, therefore they're very heavy, so that helps with keeping everything nice and open and flat in place. The pages themselves are matte finish, and as I said, pretty thick. And the reason I'm doing this video is that I had a look around, and there's apparently, as of now, nothing. No video, no overview, no shuffle through this amazing catalogue, so I thought I'd just dive in and give you an overview. Unfortunately for the English speakers around there, this catalogue is not, as of now, translated, and it is in two languages, so it has double language inside. It's in Italian and it's in French. The title means in search of time, or like seeking time, I would say. So because of that, because of the unfortunate English speaking public, I decided to take a proper look at this and go through each section and give you a bit of an overview about what they're saying. So as you can see, the layout is kind of split in half across the middle, with the Italian and the French version of the same text. Nothing particularly interesting in the beginning, I would say. It's the exhibition is happening in the National Archaeological Museum of Naples. So the director has some forward here, some words. Then we go into a section from the wife of Jean Giraud, of Moebius himself, Isabelle Giraud, who is currently, if I'm not mistaken, running the business of his legacy with the Moebius publishing house, which is also why we are seeing a lot of his, some of his work being published as of now that has never been published before, like the Mars book, the 40 Days in Desert Bee book, the new Adventures of the Major, and the Inside Moebius books that actually have been translated by Dark Horse a couple of years ago. So yeah, all of this is new content that Isabelle Giraud is actually managing and publishing. But I would say I didn't find these initial sections particularly interesting. What I really liked is more what happens like 3-4 pages in here. It's the president of the Campania region, that is the region that in which Naples is located in Italy. This is the mayor of Naples talking about this. So this is just them kind of talking about how an honor it is, and how their connection to Jean Giraud himself, given that he used to love Naples as a city. That's also why they're doing the exhibition there. He spent a lot of time in Italy. Here is the Isabelle Giraud again, the wife, talking about the love story that Moebius had with Italy. And apparently it's, if I remember correctly, that's where they met. They met in Venice in 1984. In Venice, by the way, is also where a couple of his exhibitions have taken place. I had the luck of seeing his exhibition in Venice in 2019. So very, very privileged to have seen that. But I would say up to page 13, nothing particularly interesting for the fans. Here are some pictures of him. This is him in Venice with the Venice Casino poster that he designed. Here's on a taxi ride in the Grand Canal in Venice, I would say. And here's where really the book kind of kicks off with his illustrations. The print work is fantastic. Here is on one of these illustrations with the classic Venetian masks, or his interpretation of the Venetian masks, I would say. So here is where we really kick in. To die and see Naples. Here they talk about how Jean Giraud traveled to Naples several times, and he did quite a lot of sketches and a few short strips about it as well. He talks, this is Jean Giraud himself talking how every time he decided to write and draw a story about Naples, he never had any difficulties creating one. Things came naturally to him in some sort of magical way. So he played with this to die and see Naples sentence, because there is a famous saying that is, you see Naples and then you die, as in you see Naples and you've seen everything, then you're fulfilled. So he decided to flip that around and to actually say you die and then you see Naples. And if for the ones of you who have actually collected the Edena publishing from Dark Horse, in the Art of Edena book, if I'm not mistaken, there are a couple of strips about about Naples. They're very short stories, but they're shown here in small. So something that Catalogue actually does is some of his short stories and maybe less known strips and comics are actually printed in here almost in full, sometimes in full, but they are shrank, so they are smaller reproductions, so you will see maybe 4 tables on a page. In this case it is a lot of tables on a single page. Here are some of them reproduced a bit bigger. So this story here, for example, this is printed in full in the catalogue, but it's printed in French. But you'll find the English translation in the Art of Edena book as well. So the catalogue is quite cool for that, because it collects some complete short stories, which catalogues don't generally do. So here, this is, again, these sections are usually sections, some are written by Jean Giraud himself, or extracts of his diaries and his interviews, some are written by people who have met him. So this is the Eyes of the Wizard by Jean-Michel Follon. I don't remember who he was. I read this book, but I can't remember who he is. He's talking about how Moebius had a kind of a unique view on things. How he transforms the mundane into something magical, because his eyes are the eyes of a magician or wizard. So he can transform a rock in a mountain, and you can see an ocean in a drop of water. So these are kind of alternative perspectives from people who have met him, and their interpretation and their view of who Jean Giraud was in their eyes. Speaking of Venice, we spoke of Venice before. Here are some of his fantastic illustrations from his stay in Venice. He used to go to Venice quite often. But of course he had a bit of a sci-fi twist on everything. Here is a gondola traveling, floating through the canals without water. Here's another one of those, beautiful. I think one of these was the poster of his Venice exhibition back in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. Here is Venice Celeste, Venezia Celeste, they used to call it, so the azure, light blue Venice, if you want. And the full, I think it's the full short story printed. As I said before, it's printed with several panels on a single page. I'm not sure it's complete though. No, it's not completed. There's a couple more tables to this story. I've read it once. This is actually in Italian, so some of them are in French, some of them in Italian. Unfortunately, none of the strips here are printed in English. Here they talk about the letter of Casanova. I think it's a letter that Jean-Michel Follon wrote to Moebius as a thank you because he got this drawing, the original, as a gift. I think he was an illustrator, yes. Follon is an illustrator. He got this as a gift from Moebius, and to thank him, he wrote a letter back to Moebius, signing himself Casanova. So that was pretty fun. Saying, I'm Casanova, I'm writing from the dungeons of Venice, the prisons of Venice. I saw you created a beautiful portrait of me, of light and life, an image that has blinded me. But I like the modesty of these dimensions because it was a postcard size drawing, if I'm not mistaken. You gave it to Follon, a Venetian artist that I really admire, and I would like to express my thank in his to express my thanks towards you. I would have loved to see in this image a bit, often during my days in prison, but now Follon will admire his beauty with the friendship and admiration that he feels for your fantasy and talent. I died a long time ago, and I will not be able to meet you in 1998, but instead Follon wishes to see you soon. Sincerely, Casanova. So yeah, there are a few of these letters and mentions and small windows into Moebius's life, which you don't usually know or hear about, so it's pretty cool. Again, some fantastic illustration. This is Casanova himself, or his interpretations of him. And here they are talking about Federico Fellini, the famous Italian director, which actually made a movie about Casanova, and in honor of Moebius, because he was a big fan, he decided to name one of his characters in the movie Moebius, and that character was half wizard, half stregone, how would you call that? It's like an evil wizard, I would say, a half wizard and half witch doctor, maybe something like that. Here again, Casanova's illustrations. Something interesting that they talk about is how Moebius's portraits of Casanova, or illustrations of Casanova, are based on Donald Sutherland's character. He's the one who played Casanova, if I'm not mistaken, in the Fellini movie. So that's pretty interesting. I'll try to move forward here. Here's again something. Here's Federico Fellini, drawn by Moebius. Here they talk about their meeting in 1979. So again, they go through different sections of his work. Here they go through the Edena cycle, and they're talking about how that was kick-started in 1983. It was because of a commission work that Citroën gave to Moebius. They asked him to do, it was commission work basically, and they asked him to do 4 to 6 pages for the internal communication of the 2CV car, I guess. So it was an internal document, an internal comic that was not meant to be published. It is actually published now in the Art of Edena book by Dark Horse. But this was something that that kind of started that cycle. That's quite interesting. The whole Edena book, I think, in my opinion, is one of his best works. I prefer it to the Inca even. And to think that it actually came from commission work from a car company is pretty cool. So Isabel Giraud, the wife, talking about how Moebius's intent was the one of creating a story that would put him in contact with the world of robots and those of mechanics, of people that work on machinery, pilots and such. He wanted to add a magical dimension to our cars, that for us driving them are they're like robots, but also strange containers, strange vehicles, which live under the responsibilities and the immense power of those who drives them and of those who repairs them. So he created Stel and Atan, the two characters that then carry on in the whole Edena cycle. And because of a malfunctioning in their ship, they embark on a sort of quest, a sort of adventure, without them wanting it, towards an unknown planet, an undiscovered planet. So yeah, then the whole thing then developed into the full Edena cycle. And then they talk about how in 1985, 2 years later, Moebius was alone in his Tokyo hotel and had a stroke of genius, and in 20 days he drew the first 24 pages of the beginning of the Edena cycle. And that's also where he imagined the whole series. Yeah, some cool stuff. Some beautiful spreads. Here they talk about another adventure of Stel and Atan, the planet again. I think this could also be collected in the Art of Edena book, if I'm not mistaken. And here are some of those tables, if not all of them. Here, of course, they go through Arzak, this immortal, I would say, character, and how he created the story for the Metal Whirland book. I guess the heavy metal for the English speakers. That was the magazine. They talk about how Arzach is, without any doubt, the most mystical part of Moebius's work, and one of these introspective works as well. Star Watcher. I think this was on the cover of one of the English illustration collection books of Moebius. Can't remember the year. Arzak. Again, some more Arzak. I think some of these are collected in the 40 Days in Desert B book. So yes, the catalogue is really, I kind of like that they go and dive into his most meaningful and known work and extract parts of it and just disseminate it across the catalogue. I would say it's a perfect book for who has never bought any of his art books. The comics are one thing, but there's plenty of books out there which are about his art, like the Metal Chronicles, I think they're called, the Chaos Book, Star Watcher, and so on. So I would say if you get this, you probably can be happy and you won't need to be looking for those other books. Here they talk about another crucial character of Moebius, that is the Major, and how the Major is a creator of universes and multiple dimension, and it's a character that comes from his childhood readings, how he was fascinated by the personality of the explorers, the adventurers. So he felt it was an effortless thing for him to kind of go there and start designing a story about an adventurer, with a bit of a sci-fi twist, of course. So he would talk, Giraud, here's Jacques Giraud himself talking about how he would draw on his notebook, without a story, without a plot. He would just draw and kind of free jazz himself into the development of that story. So the Major was kind of drafted for the first time in 1975 and took shape in the hermetic airtight garage that was published in several issues between 76 and 79 by the Metal Hurlant magazine. And he talks about how there are a few certainties about the Major, but not that many. How he's born in 1958 in Germany, in the West Germany, from a Swedish mother and a German father, and became a journalist as well. But he went missing during the Vietnam War, and accidentally crossed a temporal portal of sort, and curiously he emerged in the present. And here he goes on about how basically he became the Major. It's pretty random, crazy stuff. And basically it's just the formations, but he talks about how these are the only certainties of the Major. The rest is all just kind of improvised adventures, which is quite cool. Again, some tables about the Major. This is from the work that I think was published very recently, a couple of years ago, only in French, I think in French and Spanish, and it's the latest adventures of the Major, coming from Moebius's sketchbooks. This has not been translated in Italian, so I haven't read it, and has not been translated in English either. It's quite thick. I've seen it. I've shuffled through the book, and I think it's at least a couple hundred pages, if not more. Hopefully it will be published in some sort of translated version. But again, as many of the latest books that have been published by Isabelle Giraud. These are mostly kind of sketch collections and illustration collections. So if you were to buy them, if you were to buy the major, I think it's called the Nature of Mars. No, sorry, the Creatures of Mars, and then the 40 Days in Desert B. There is literally no text on those books. The major is the one that has a bit more text than the others, but the other two you could easily pick up in French and just enjoy the illustrations. Speaking of which, here we're talking about the Mars book, the Creatures of Mars, and there's a section about that. It's kind of a catalogue that apparently is created by the staff that works for Major Grubert, which is the major, and what his artist engineers have discovered on planet Mars and catalogued in these books. So there's a bit of a premise to that, but then the book itself is just these illustrations. The book, I have the book, here they collect his colored illustrations, which are very, very cool. But just, if you were to pick up the book is mostly black and white, and there's maybe a dozen pages in color. So here they selected only the color pages, because of course they perform a lot better on a catalog like this. But if you are picking up the book, you should expect a mostly black and white book. Here they talk about the inside the mind of Moebius. So talking about the inside Moebius cycle that has been again collected in 3 volumes by Dark Horse. So they're still available out there if you are looking for that. And this is basically his latest work before he passed. Very introspective, very different, very kind of inconsistent when it comes to art as well. Much more sketchy in some parts, much more refined in others, but very comical, very self-ironic, I would say. So some of that is collected here. Here's a section that I did not know, well, part of his work that I did not know existed, but it talks about the kind of the Greek mythology, Roman mythology inspired work, which was done in the late 90s. And it was, there were some illustrations and tables that he created to then sell at auction to collect money to basically recover some of the rights to his work that were in the hands of an American publisher, I suppose. There's no names here, but they talk about his partners of the American company he had created. So I'm speculating this is the Humanoids publishing company, but I'm not sure. And indeed, if you go to humanoids.com, you will see some of his work, which they have the rights to publish, which is the work that he did with Jodorowsky. So the Inca, the Eyes of the Cat, Mad Woman of the Sacred Heart, and Angel Clothes. I think those are the only 4 books published by Humanoids that have Moebius art on it. So I'm assuming they're talking about that, and they talk about how he tried to regain control of his work and of the rights of his work in publishing his works. So these were tables, fantastic tables that have been done by him to then sell and gain some funds basically to win the legal battle. And this is of course one of these tables is the table that you see on the cover of this book. So here they talk a bit about the different mythological characters. Oedipus, they're talking about Orpheus, and they basically they go straight into the myth and talking about what happened to him, what happened to her, what happened to these demigods, etc. But the prints are fantastic. And here is Theseus and Arianna, of course, from the Minotaur myth, and that's what you'll see on the cover. Athena, Hercules. I guess this is him fighting the Cerberus. And this is another section that I was unaware of, talking about the crystalline or crystal visions of Moebius. It spawns from his fascination with nature and, you know, plants, animals, and also stones and crystals. I think he was drawn, from what I'm reading here, he was drawn to the crystals because they maybe possess some sort of magical connection. So here's some illustrations. You can tell these are recent because of the coloring style, I would say. Never seen this before I got my hands on this catalogue. And here, I think we're getting towards the end here, but they're talking about his illustration work for the Divine Comedy book on Paradise. So he decided to illustrate this. It's pretty, I think you can still get your hands on this book. I don't own it, but I've seen it around and still online on eBay, on Amazon, you can probably find it. But it's just an illustration series, and what he talks about here is that basically, you know, hell has always been so interesting, and a lot of illustrators and artists go there and want to do art and illustrations about hell, but nobody wanted to really touch paradise or heaven because, of course, that's boring. So he decided to go against that trend and do a series on that. And here they are. They're all here. They're very small though, unfortunately, but as I said before, multiple tables on a single spread. They're pretty cool. Some poems from Moebius here. And some extracts from the Divine Comedy from Dante Alighieri. So yeah, I think that's it basically. Then with a small bio on Jean Giraud himself and kind of where he came from. It's pretty short, it just stops here. Here we have it in Italian, here we have it in French. So that's it. Nothing new there. And then of course the credits and mentions where they come from. So yeah, here we have it. Alla ricerca del tempo. Great book. If you don't have any of his catalogs, any of his art books, I definitely recommend this. Thank you for watching.